Hello, I'm Gary Stearman. Welcome to Skywatch TV. Today's guest, author Terry James. Terry, good to talk to you again.
It's always great to be with you, Gary.
And when I say author, Terry James, I mean author. How many books have you written, Terry?
Well, written by myself, 25 or 26, I think, and then co-authored up to probably 33 altogether, probably.
Now, your last book was Cauldron, and a lot of those books are out there in circulation right now, but at the moment, we're going to talk about Terry's most recent book. It's called Antichrist Chronicles, Unveiling the Rise of the Earth's Final Fuhrer. The Fuhrer. Everybody remembers the Fuhrer.
Der Fuhrer, yeah.
What an evil and wicked man, and I think probably the Antichrist will be far worse, right?
Right.
Now, let's talk about the structure of this book. I think this book is kind of unique because, and by the way, I have to confess, I wrote the foreword. Terry requested, would you write the foreword for this book? And so I read the manuscript, and I was very glad to do that. And when I wrote the foreword, it struck me at the time, Terry, that reading this book is sort of like talking to an old friend. You know, it's kind of like sitting on the couch in the evening and just discussing ideas about what's happening in today's world from a perspective of biblical prophecy. In other words, it's a very comfortable book. I really like that about it.
Well, thank you, Gary, and I think that's part of the construct of the book I wanted to get across, and so I'm glad that it affected your reading that way, and I hope it does those who read it. I think it's something that is very important today, that we look at what's coming down the road and very quickly at us.
Now, let's talk about what sparked the idea for this book. You're constantly thinking, you're constantly watching the world from the perspective of Bible prophecy. What provided the spark of inspiration on this particular book?
Just the fact that I believe everybody needs to be kept up to date on exactly what's happening. You know, we see so many things unfolding around us that even students of Bible prophecy are hard-pressed to keep up with what's going on. And that's true of people in general. And so there needs to be some kind of a systematic way of presenting news items, I believe, and overlaid by the, I would say, the microscope or the whatever of Bible prophecy, the light of Bible prophecy. And that's what we try to do with this book, is to write articles that more or less dissect the news around us that's occurring daily and weekly and monthly, and put it into some kind of cogent form that will bring it down to the reader in an understandable form, saying, this is what's happening. Be aware. This is happening. The way for Antichrist coming into this world is being paved by Satan and by natural forces, by the forces of government. Everywhere you look, this is happening. So that was the kind of the way I looked at how the book should be presented.
Now, you're a long-time commentator on Bible prophecy, and you've been around a long time. You've been watching the world and kind of adding your thoughts to what's going on. What do you think is the number one problem in the world today as you view it?
Well, there's no question what the number one problem is, and that is a rejection of Jesus Christ. That's what's going to bring on God's judgment and eventually his wrath. By the rejection of Jesus Christ, I mean, people refuse to see. They will accept any other form of religion without question. A lot of people will.
Yeah.
They will even be very kind toward Islam, toward the Muslims, despite all the things they see happening. And there are people who are Muslims who are not fanatics, but basically the Muslim religion, the Islamist religion, is one that says if the infidel won't bow the knee, then they should be taken off the planet.
Yeah.
And so in that regard, I think that people will accept that for some reason. It's like a madness. People will accept that kind of theology without hardly saying a word about it here in this country I'm talking about, including mainstream media. But at the same time, they will try to shut Christians down, as recently happened in Houston, Texas. try to shut the Christian message down at every opportunity, as if it was
Yeah.
some kind of a genocide being perpetrated.
Yeah, you're talking about the mayor of Houston
I
who
am, yes.
requested that all pastors file their Sunday morning messages for review,
Exactly.
which is absolutely amazing. I would never have dreamed such a thing would be happening right now. How about you?
Not in this nation. I mean, this is a nation founded on Christian principles. Now, I never have believed we've been truly a Christian nation because the whole nation has accepted Christ. But
Right.
certainly our founding fathers founded the nation based upon biblical principle. And this is just so counter to everything the founding fathers would have ever thought of that would happen. Pastors being told to turn in their sermons. Well, isn't that kind of what they came to this country to get away from?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. So, anyway, Jesus himself said that, they hated me, they're going to hate you. And certainly our Lord has been absolutely accurate in that, as he is in all things.
Paul, writing to Timothy, said, "In the last days, perilous times shall come." And I noted some time ago that the Greek word that's translated perilous there can be translated as insane or a raving madness of a sort. And we really are, as you mentioned earlier, just a moment ago, we are seeing a kind of a creeping insanity in the world today.
Absolutely. Romans chapter 1, it said that God finally gives them over to a reprobate mind. Well, that's upside down thinking. That's madness. And I
Yeah.
think from government, from the very top of the United States government, all the way throughout society, unfortunately, we're seeing that manifest. Don't you agree?
Yes, absolutely. Let's talk about a couple of things now. Given society's predilections at the moment, given the number one problem, which is the rejection of Christianity and the Lord Jesus Christ, comment on the fact that we may be living in the last days, and I'm going to give you a chance to wax eloquent on that. I think we are. Do you think we are?
Well, I think there's no question about it. Again, we get into all the social and moral issues. Paul said in 2 Timothy chapter 3, talked about the perilous times, as you mentioned. I think one of the key things, now there are many, like for example, I think one of the key things is without natural affection. He said, perilous times shall come for men should be without natural affection. Now, there's two elements there that jump out at me anyway. Number one is homosexuality. What is natural about homosexuality? Well, nothing. God says he created man, he created woman to be as one, and not man and man to be as one. And so that's not natural affection. That's without natural affection. The second item on that particular category, in that particular category, I believe, is abortion.
Yeah.
What is more natural than the baby being protected in its mother's womb?
Right.
And yet we have what now? I don't know what the latest figure is. 55 million babies aborted since 1973, Roe v. Wade. It's, again, madness has set in. And so that shows where we are on God's prophetic timeline and why history is, I think, rushing toward that moment of tribulation, as Jesus called it, and great tribulation. And I think we're rushing that way very quickly in so many areas. The very fact that Israel, I know we may get into some geopolitical situations later on, but again, Israel being the number one nation in the spotlight, no matter which way the camera, I like to say, or the microphones turn, they always turn right back on Israel and Jerusalem and the peace process. Well, Israel is right in the center of all that. Recently, Secretary Kerry has gone over there and put pressure on Israel again, and there's a big flap brewing. There was a big flap brewing. And so Israel being back in the picture after almost, 1900-something years being dispersed, its language lost and everything else, well, it's back, just as the Bible said it would be. It's back in the picture again and at the focus of attention for the whole world. So there are three things that I gave you right there. Shows where we are in God's prophetic timeline and how quickly things are progressing toward what I believe is Christ calling us in the rapture.
Well, we're talking with Terry James today, author of 25 plus books, a keen observer of the world from the perspective of Bible prophecy. His book, the book that we're offering today, is called Antichrist Chronicles, Unveiling the Rise of the Earth's Final Frontier. we are seeing things change. We are seeing some remarkable changes taking place that many of us never dreamed would take place. We're seeing the supernatural kind of jump out at us today, Terry. The movies that are being presented, the public entertainment is talking about alien invaders. People talk about seeing flying saucers. People talk about aliens among us, and they talk about transhumanism and all sorts of things that you and I would never have dreamed of when we were younger. Comment on that a little bit, if you will.
Well, I personally believe that all of this talk we see about aliens and UFOs and all of this sort of thing is so prevalent today is because Satan himself is preparing the whole world for that moment when I believe millions of people are going to vanish. And I believe you believe that too, in the rapture of the church.
I do.
And I think all of this alien invasion stuff, extraterrestrial talk, is to have the great lie, or at least part of the great lie that will be presented to the world according to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, that people will believe the lie and they will accept something they would not accept. They would not accept Jesus, but they will accept a false Messiah, a false Savior at some point. And I believe Satan is preparing the world, particularly through, and there's no better way to prepare the world, and particularly in the United States, than through the entertainment media.
Yeah.
And it's because people are going to watch television. They're going to go to the movies. And so they don't mind being entertained into believing that at some point this world is going to be invaded. But Satan's big lie, along with the New Age lie and other things, are that these people have put us here in the first place in some sort of a seeding fashion, and now these people from Pleiades or from somewhere out there are going to come back at some point, take the bad people off the earth, and come down and inculcate us evil people off the planet somewhere, and it brings us back when we've been re-educated. And meanwhile, there'll be peace on earth, which is exactly what the Antichrist is going to come in claiming. He's going to claim that he's coming in as a peacemaker. That's what Revelation chapter 6, the rider on the white horse, is all about, the first rider of the apocalypse.
And you know, the Bible talks about power, all sorts of power, special powers and signs and lying wonders. And the Antichrist rises on that sort of thing. That is, he is surrounded by those things.
And that's what our book, Antichrist, is about, the rise of the final Fuhrer, the last great evil dictator. There'll be a benevolent dictator on earth, believe me, when Jesus comes back, but he will rule with a rod of iron, and it will be perfect righteousness. But meanwhile, we're going to have a dictator of absolute evil intent. He will come as a man of peace. And I believe all this UFO stuff is to set up this world for that big lie, that these people now have come to rescue us. That's what's happened to all these people who have vanished. And that's been going on for quite some time, as you know, Gary, the preparation through media and through New Age, all kinds of ways.
Well, you know, I thought I had seen it all when that movie came out 2-3 years ago called Cowboys and Aliens. You know, that was a big change from the time when I was a young boy, and we've now gone to Cowboys and Aliens, which is really popularizing the idea that we're going to have visitors from elsewhere. And the Bible talks about those visitors, except it doesn't talk about them being from outer space. It talks about them being from inner space and from hell. Mm-hmm. And you and I understand that that's going to happen. But what I'd like to do at the moment is break over into another subject, which is near and dear to your heart. There's a big discussion going on today about the rapture. Will it take place before God's wrath, say somewhere in the middle of the tribulation? Will it take place toward the end of the tribulation? Will it take place at the beginning of the tribulation, or maybe sometime before the tribulation? I'd like for you to talk about the rapture of the church, which Paul refers to as the blessed hope.
That's right, Titus 2:13. Well, the rapture is the tribulation era is the wrath of God. This is God's wrath pouring upon a judgment-bound and deserving world that has rebelled against Him totally. He's got to change things. He's got to come and make it right. And so it is God's wrath. Well, we're told in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 9, we, meaning believers, are not appointed to wrath. Now that right there is the rapture. We are going to be taken out of the time of God's wrath. It says in Revelation chapter 3, verse 10, we will be removed before his wrath comes upon the churches and things of the Laodicean era, particularly, before every wrath of both God and of Antichrist and of man's own genocide against man comes into existence. We'll be taken off the earth. Paul talks about it in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 13 through 18, through 1 Corinthians 15, verses 51 through 55, basically. It says that we shall not all sleep. That means we shall not all die, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in an atomos of time in the Greek, in a twinkling of an eye. We shall be changed because Paul says in 1 Corinthians that we must, this mortal, meaning our mortal flesh, must be made immortal, must take on immortality, must be made immortal, because man cannot inherit the heavenlies in his fleshly form. Has to be a translation, and that's all part of the rapture, in which the body is changed completely in that atomos of time, that time that is quicker than the eye can blink. And we will be changed, and we'll be instantly in the presence of God. Now, Jesus talked about it himself. He talked about the rapture, in my view, in John verses 14, verses 1 through 3, I think it is, isn't it? Behold, I show you a mystery. We are, be not, how does it start, Gary?
We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed.
Yeah, we shall all be changed. And he said he's coming back. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. Behold, I go away to prepare a place. If I go, I'll come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also, meaning heaven. So he's coming back, and he's coming back to get believers.
Let's extend that a little bit, because to me, the blessed hope, the real blessing of it is that you and I are going to escape judgment. One of my favorite verses in the Bible, Terry, is John 5:22, where Jesus explained to the Pharisees, he says, the Father hath committed all judgment unto the Son. And at that point, Jesus identified himself as the judge of planet Earth. And the book of Revelation is all about how he judges planet Earth. Well, we are invited to be part of his family by adoption. And it's always been my contention that since we're part of the family, we're not going to be judged, because we are related now by faith to the judge himself, and therefore we are not going to be subject to judgment. It just makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, it does to me too. Unfortunately, those who are so adamantly, even among people who say they're believers, are so adamantly against the rapture. I mean, I have been accused of leading people through the gates of hell by teaching the pre-tribulation rapture, which I can't understand. It's just as plain as day, and it is a wonderful thing to look forward to. It's not something that is hate-filled or angry or anything else.
Well, you know, the tribulation, and I'm sure you could talk about this for a long time, is not going to be a bowl of cherries. It's going to be, as described in several places in the Bible, perhaps the worst period of time in the history of planet Earth. And it's going to be, I think, beyond imagination. How could we possibly go through that?
Jesus said it would be the worst time that ever was up to that point, and ever would be again. Now, we've gone through some pretty terrible things. You know, the Jews in particular. I mean, look at the Holocaust. Well, the whole era of Hitler and look at Stalin, Mao Zedong, and before them throughout history, the millions of lives that have been lost through genocide and other things. And Jesus said this is going to be the worst time ever. There's not going to be anything to ever compare to it. Well, we have no idea. And I don't want to find out, frankly, what that era is going to be like.
Nor do I. You know, the idea of debate in the last days is interesting to me. In a way, Terry, I would not have guessed that the debate would be as sharp as it has become between Christians who essentially want us to prepare for judgment, and those Christians who are telling us that though we may see some tough times, we will not enter upon the period of judgment, planet Earth. we may not escape from some rough times lying just in the
That's
immediate
true.
future. But on the other
Tribulation with a
hand,
little t, yeah.
yeah, but we will escape from the big judgment.
Yeah. For some reason, the people who are against the pre-tribulation view, that is, that we will escape this judgment, for some reason they believe that we deserve to go through this punishment, that this is the way we're going to wash our robes clean and all of this and make ourselves righteous so that we can escape all of hell and everything else. But we're going to have to go through this terrible time of tribulation. Well, I thought that's what Jesus did for us on the cross. He's the one that makes us righteous. But on top of that, though, you mean to tell me that the millions upon millions of Christians who have died since the church was born have been martyred and everything else. Now, those people are going to have to come back. They're going to have to go through the tribulation before they can be washed clean. That makes no sense.
It makes no sense at all, particularly if you view Christianity as a body. That is, we're called the body of Christ, and we're inseparable.
Absolutely.
He prayed to the Father, I in them and thou in me, that we would all be one. And, we are all one. And so if you take the body or the view of Christianity as the body of Christ, you're not going to separate part of the body and put it through judgment and another part and spare it from judgment.
That's right. Don't you think that chapter 17 of John is one of the most beautiful things you've ever read? Jesus is Jesus talking to the Father and saying we are all one. To me, that is one of the most beautiful prayers to the Father, and including us in all of that.
Well, we're talking about author Terry James' latest book, The Antichrist Chronicles, Unveiling the Rise of the Earth's Final Furor. And the word chronicles is part of the title. And this is a chronicle. It goes all the way back to the Fuhrer, who was a type of the Antichrist. It sort of brings us up to the present day in chronicle fashion. It's very, as I said a moment ago, very comfortable read. It's sort of like talking to a friend, and yet it's packed with information. But I think you mean this book to be an encouragement, don't you, Terry?
Well, absolutely, because I think it's just encouraging to realize that despite all the carnage we see around us and all the bad things that the world portends for us, we know Jesus is coming for us, and he's coming to make things right, and it looks like he's coming soon. So all of these things are an encouragement to me, and I hope after reading Antichrist Chronicles, they will want to get more into their Bible, into Bible prophecy, into watching exactly what's going on and see what's happening.
Now, you're looking at various things that are happening these days. You're including them in your way of chronicling the last days on planet Earth. What do you think is the most important thing we should be watching right now?
The most important thing we could be watching, I think, is the peace process in Israel. Now, I know there are many things we should be watching. We could say the church falling apart, the apostasy that we see developing, the movement into the emergent church and all that. That's one thing we should be watching, apostasy. But I think watching the peace process, because as I said before, every time the cameras and microphones turn away to catch some other event somewhere else, no matter what it is, eventually it's going to be right back there on Israel and its differences with its enemy neighbors, who are blood vowed, incidentally, to push them into the Mediterranean. And the peace process is being forced upon Israel is something we should watch, because this is what's going to set in motion the covenant of peace, therefore the tribulation. After the Antichrist signs the covenant of peace, as we see in Daniel chapter 9, 26 and 27, the prince that shall come signs the covenant of peace, and then God begins judging the world from that point on, because Israel has, one thing is because Israel has rejected God's way and has accepted this Antichrist, a false Messiah. Jesus said, me you refuse, but this other one who will come you will accept. And of course that flies in the face of God. And so I think the false peace process that is developing, and this man Antichrist will be the man of false peace. He will be the one coming on that white horse we were talking about. But before that, believers will be taken into heaven, because we believe that the rapture occurred before that happened. And so that is the encouragement I have, and I want to give to all believers. And I hope many will become believers, and we'll see that also.
And so do I. Well, we're talking to author Terry James. His latest book, the latest of 25, by the way, prolific writer, is called Antichrist Chronicles, Unveiling the Rise of the Earth's Final Führer. And that's a pretty good description of him. This book, plus Terry's previous book called Cauldron, Supernatural Implications of the Current Middle East. Both of these books absolutely packed with prophetic information from the pre-tribulational point of view, dispensational, premillennial, pre-tribulational, good theology, good education in both of these books. And you can have them both for $29. Just call the number on your screen right now and ask for Terry James books, the Antichrist Chronicles and Cauldron. And we're going to include this DVD by Mark Biltz. It's the one where he talks about, and by the way, in great detail, about the blood moons, those 4 lunar eclipses accompanied by a solar eclipse falling on Jewish feast days. And of course, the whole world's talking about this phenomenon right now. That's Antichrist Chronicles plus Cauldron plus this DVD by Mark Biltz, The 4 Blood Moons. Just call the number on your screen right now and order those. You'll be glad you did. A good read. You know, when you talk with Terry or when you read his books, you're just, you get the feeling you're talking to a friend. And I consider you a friend, Terry.
Well, thank you, Gary. I appreciate that very much.
And it's always good to sit and talk with you. We've got about a minute now. Any final thought that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me on the program, having me on the program. Secondly, for writing the foreword to this book. I thank you very much again, and I appreciate it. And mainly, I just want people to know that we are in a time that is very obviously leading up to the time of Christ's return. Yeah, we're looking for, we say that the Antichrist in the book, the subtitle indicates that the final Führer is on his way. And we chronicle that, as we say. But the main thing we as Christians want to look for is not the Antichrist, but Jesus Christ. Nowhere are we told to look for Antichrist. We're told to look for Jesus Christ. And that's what we're doing.
Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
For Terry James and Skywatch TV, I'm Gary Stearman. Good being with you.